My name is Steve Kessen. I'm our CEO here at Fathom, and welcome to our fourth edition here of the Remote Roundtable series. So glad to have you all join today. We're just getting kicked off now, and the topic of discussion today is social media that converts. So we will be digging into that conversation today. Before we go all the way into the content, and this is just a great opportunity for us marketers to get together as we're all working from our home offices, kitchen tables, wherever it may be today. Just an opportunity for us marketers to come together in arms once again. So I want to share a couple of ground rules. You guys probably all know the drill at this point of how to operate in Zoom and so on, but just a few things to help keep us all aligned and moving forward today. So a couple items to start. The first, remember to find that mute unmute button. So please be on mute when you're not speaking, just to make audio best for everyone. And then don't forget to unmute before you speak. I would love to use this as an opportunity to invite everyone to share your video today. I know we're all in non-ideal settings, but it looks like we got 10 or so folks already sharing video. It would be great to see a few more faces. So please share your video if you're able to do so. And we're going to have a variety of opportunities to engage throughout the conversation today. If you have any challenges technically at all, I would encourage you to just go ahead and use that chat feature within Zoom, and we'll have somebody there to help support if you have technical challenges. And then we're going to have poll questions as well. So we'll have poll questions throughout the conversation today, and that will just help round out the perspective that we'll be getting. So the first component that we have today is, which are you most interested in discussing today as it relates to social? There's so much around social media today, and it continues to evolve. So we really want to tailor and gear the conversation to what's most interesting to the group we have on the line today. And the last thing is, be ready to engage. So this is intended to be a discussion. That's why we call it the roundtable. So it's intended to be a discussion today, a collaboration. We will share a perspective. We do have some social media experts on the line today, but we also, each of us, have our own experiences and expertise that helps each other. So really encourage everyone to participate in the conversation. So in the spirit of engaging, I would love to have a few folks go ahead and introduce themselves. And this is just an opportunity to make sure that we tailor the conversation in the right way. And we probably won't go through everybody on the line right now, but would love to have a few folks jump in and share, hey, what is it that you're hoping to get out of the conversation today? Share the organization in which you're with, maybe what your role is, and we can do just some quick introductions. So why don't we go ahead and start with Alan? Alan, I know you were on our first week, so I would love if you could kick us off on the introductions.
Sure. Hi, Steve. Alan Rosso with Columbia University. I work in our Office of Alumni Development, socialness of Columbia programs and alumni opportunities, and really excited about this call today because an area that we do a lot of work in and struggle mightily is how do we actually convert the social media impressions into either people volunteering, coming to events, and most importantly, and our biggest struggle, trying to get them to make a gift.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Great to have you. And that's the nature of the topic today. So we should be well aligned on that. Would love to have a few others. See, Amy, you're on the line. Would you mind just giving a brief introduction? Oh, you're actually on mute, Amy. Oh, that's still not working. This darn technology doesn't always want to work in our favor. I will run to somebody else and come back to you, Amy, as your technology still we're still not able to hear you. Kevin, you're a friend we've seen around the block a few times. Kevin, would love for you to just a brief introduction.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we're good.
Great. So yeah, Kevin Huff, formerly of CFA Institute, where I spent almost 4 years running their digital marketing program. Fathom was a strategic agency partner for us. really interested really across organic and paid and how you can play across those two and understand the opportunities there, the challenges there, and then, you know, return on investment is always so critical. So organic is usually a different approach. And then I know we've got a variety of people here, but really focusing around the creative and how you build a voice as somebody on a social media channel. So nice, consistent creative and voice and how that can interplay. So not too much.
No, it's great, Kevin. No, appreciate it. Amy, is that audio working for you now?
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm from CFA Institute. Hello, and we have been doing. I'm on the B2B side, and we are doing some organic social, but we haven't done any paid social, and I think that's really could be very beneficial to us. We are serving sort of institutional clients and universities, but we don't have a lot of sort of name contacts there, and I think this could be a way of finding and talking to them and sort of telling them our story.
Fantastic. Great. Let me just open it up to, I know I called on a few names to get us kicked off. Anybody just want to, you know, jump in, introduce yourself and say, hey, I would really love to make sure we discuss this today.
Hi there.
Hey there.
It's Dana Mueller from Serva.
Hey, Dana.
So I guess I just had something that I wanted to talk about, which was just some more B2B organic social. What is everyone doing as far as making those that organic social convert into leads, especially right now during COVID-19, it's really important, and some of our budgets have been cut. So really trying to make that organic social perform the best that it can for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's a hot topic of discussion for our B2B folks. So absolutely. Maybe I'll offer, you know, the opportunity for one more to jump in at this point, and then we might do further introductions later on. Does one more want to jump in and say, hey, I'd love to make sure we discuss this today? All right, well, I'll let you hold on to that thought for a moment here. Let's go ahead and jump in. So I want to make sure that you have the appropriate context in terms of, just so you know who you're speaking with. I know we have some folks that we've worked with on the line and others that are new to Fathom. So just a 45-second overview to Fathom and the way that we operate. So, you know, at Fathom, we're digital marketers first and foremost, and we believe that a strong strategy really starts with deep roots. And really that starts with being deep rooted in our client's business. So we bring a depth of expertise across a variety of different industries, but we're not going to bring assumptions. We really partner with you to make sure we understand the uniqueness of your organization. We then pair that with our own deep expertise within digital to offer a critical perspective to you and your team. And at the end of the day, it's all about driving an outcome, and that's what matters most. And we work in collaboration with our clients to make sure that every decision is based on objectives and are measured with clear metrics. And the type of work in which we do, you know, if you look on the left-hand side, our client base, you know, we really strive to be the deepest level of experts in what we call the considered purchase journey. So on the B2C side, it's higher education, healthcare, financial services, and so on. And then B2B services, and so on. Expertise, it's really across all components of digital. Today's discussion is going to be focused on social media. You know, we've got an upcoming discussion next week on SEO. We've already had conversations previously on nurture marketing, which is marketing automation, as well as paid search. And if you've missed any of those, you can check out those previous roundtables on our website. And at the end of the day, variety of different solutions to drive business objectives for marketers. So that's a little bit of context about Fathom. I want to give a brief introduction to the team of experts that we have on the line today. So we have 3 of our social media experts here partnered with us to help drive that part of the discussion today. We've got Deanna Fleming, who's our senior manager of social media, and Corinne Tam, our lead strategist for social media. They work across a variety of our clients, both on the paid and the organic side. So they'll be able to bring a very well-rounded perspective. And then we have our leader, Angela Krieger. She's our VP of Channel Strategy. She also used to lead social media at Joanne Fabrics in the distant past, so brings both the brand side and the agency side perspective. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Angela, and she's going to offer just a quick take, a few moments, and then we'll get into the roundtable discussion.
Great, thanks for the intro and the handoff, Steve. Really excited to talk to you all today about social media. It's where I've built a lot of my career and spent a lot of years in my career, as Steve mentioned, building social media strategies for clients, not only at an agency perspective, but also brand side. So understanding what it means to be very intimate and ingrained in your brand and your personas and how you can utilize social media to activate that. And I think that that's really what social is always all about, whether you're talking about paid social or organic social, is how are you connecting with the people who are your customers? They're craving social connection. They're utilizing the platform to talk with their friends and their family, and to make those connections, and they're looking for that kind of relationship with your brand or your institution. So understanding really why they're accessing the platform, what are their motivations, and taking that audience first approach. And when I think about a lot of your questions in terms of how do I get someone to convert on social media, whether that's from an organic perspective or if you're serving a targeted paid ad that's very personalized towards a specific audience, it's really thinking about that audience and what are they looking for? Where might they be in their journey? How are we not just asking them for their information without giving them something in return? So how can you help them? How can you provide a solution or something that is bettering their interactions, their life, their education, their career, their outcomes, or their business model? And making sure that you're putting them at the forefront of the conversation there and thinking about how you solve for their needs. And aligning your content in that way. So understanding what your audience is looking for from your brand or from your competitors, like what's that total landscape? Who are you up against? And how are you creating that personal and emotional connection? I think that that's a place within social where we have a great opportunity to really drive a lot of that and build an affinity. Knowing your goals is also really important. So I hear about it less today than I heard about it years ago, but if your goals are to gain followers or to get likes on what you're sharing, that's not what social media is about, and that's not how you activate a successful social strategy. It should be about leads. It should be about even lower funnel engagement. So how are you nurturing your customer? How are they finding you from an awareness perspective and learning more about you? How are you educating them? So knowing all of those things and being able to track and understand who is converting from social, what types of content are they converting on, whether that is an advertisement or it's a community driven post in their feed that's organic. And then making sure you're really aware of your resource alignment. A lot of times we experience where paid and organic teams aren't aligned. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that you could make from a social media strategic perspective. That we should understand what's resonating with our individuals organically, and how do we use paid to amplify that. So taking those cues from what's happening naturally within the market or within the platform and understanding how we use paid to really drive that to new customers who might not have found you yet or aren't aware of your institution. And then thinking about how you tailor your social media approach by your platform. A lot of times we'll see what we're doing on Facebook. We're doing that on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn, and those are really different platforms, and individuals have really different motivations as they're accessing those platforms. So Instagram is very highly visual, and it has a certain aesthetic ceiling that you need to abide by, where when you're on LinkedIn, you're thinking about career opportunities or doing research or trying to learn to advance your career. Twitter is more really quick, digestible content, and you need to abide by that, thinking about how often people are accessing the platform. And we see averages of sessions are just a few minutes on Twitter. So you have a really short window to capture a user's attention on Twitter, where Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, we see longer session times, and we have more of an experience where we could expect a click through and a conversion. And really tailoring your approach there is really important because of how people use the platform, but also your audience is probably very different across platforms. So your customers who you're engaging with on Facebook aren't the same ones that you're reaching on LinkedIn or on Instagram, and understanding who those people are and what they're looking for and the type of content that resonates with them is really how you build the most effective strategy to not only engage, but also convert your customers. And that is my quick take on social media today to kick off our conversation. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you guys are all doing in social media and your take on my quick take, and what you're seeing or what challenges you're currently trying to solve for.
Yeah, so Angela, what we saw here is the first question that we put up to start the first poll is 60% almost are interested in talking about both organic and paid. And we even had I think it was Dana that brought forth the idea that said, hey, we're in organic, or should we be going into paid, especially on the B2B side or so on. So Angela, can you maybe offer a first perspective, and then we'll get from the rest of the group. How do you balance between organic efforts versus paid? When do you know when to bring in paid versus not? Just what's your quick perspective on that?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, in an ideal state, they're both an always-on approach, and you're understanding what are the strengths of organic and what control you have over organic posts versus what you have in paid. So organic is great for upper funnel activities in reaching new audiences, but you have less control about who's actually seeing that type of content. So as I think about my content strategy from an organic perspective, I'm thinking of what is more engaging to a broader scope of individuals, and how am I making sure that my content and what I'm posting and sharing with my audience here really aligns with that. From a paid perspective, I think you have an opportunity to be much more personalized and specific because of the sophistication and targeting capabilities. And that allows you to drive that personalized engagement that we know consumers today are looking for. So we can understand what actions might they have been taking on your site. How can we understand what their motivations might be, or where they're looking for answers to questions, and utilizing that to our advantage to be really specific in our content approach and moving them through to conversion. So I see a balance. It's a definite balance beam. And sometimes you have to, sometimes you have to rely on organic more than you do on paid. If you're thinking about a time like today where budgets might not be as fluid and as prevalent as they were. So understanding where are the opportunities to reach a broad audience with a broader message? The last thing you want to do is have a really specific message and it deliver to someone and them feeling like you don't know them and it's irrelevant to where they're at or their stage of the journey with your brand. And that's when you start thinking into those conversations and you're getting more narrow, that's when you bring paid in and you think about those activations and that type of content.
That's a great perspective. I would love to open it up to all the participants on the line today. This is intended to be a collaboration across marketers, so learn from each other just as much as you learn from our experts. How are you and your organization balancing your paid efforts versus your organic efforts? What's working for you, and maybe where do you need a little bit of help?
Steve, this is Santana. I guess we're a higher ed institution, and for our perspective, I feel like we've put a lot of effort into organic content and have not really explored much in the paid effort. I mean, occasionally we boosted a post, but that's about where it stops. So I guess I was mostly kind of curious on, paid social efforts for higher ed and how that might translates to, why, it justifies a higher investment as we go along.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we do have a couple of other higher ed institutions on the line, and Deanna, you work with a fair amount of higher education institutions. I don't know if you'd want to enter a perspective into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. I think in supporting our higher education partners, we view paid social as almost a full funnel solution. There's a use case at each stage of that customer journey in a way that we can drive impact down to enrollment volume at each of those steps. I'm thinking about a lot of the opportunity that we have to amplify our nurture efforts. I know once we are capturing leads, we want those users to come back and apply with us. We're able to target that specific group of prospective students with that personalized messaging to drive them to that next step of consideration and commitment. Another area where we focus a lot, especially at this point of the year, is in yield. So with a few of my client partners today, we have launched and are managing campaigns that target a specific group of admitted students and pushing those users to come back, maybe participate in a virtual tour, become a little bit more familiar with the institution to the level where they're ready to commit to joining us for the next upcoming semester. So I would say tons and tons of opportunity to amplify any nurture efforts that you have live today. Or if you don't have nurture efforts live today, social is a place where you can kind of dip your toe into that area. So if there are new nurture strategies that you're maybe interested in testing ahead of building out that full program, you could look to test that within social as that first step, as a way to learn about what's going to be most successful to you, what messaging is going to resonate best, and then converting that into a new email stream or new content that you're sharing there. Up the funnel to even a step, I think with a majority, if not all of our higher education partners, we're participating in some sort of lead generation activity. So I think a lot of the value that we see in paid social is the specificity in which we're able to target individuals. We have so much data around what users are interested in based on what content they're engaging with in their newsfeed, what pages and what brands they're liking and engaging with, what topics they're having conversation around. And we can use all of those signals in addition to signals that maybe we're gathering from our own properties to accurately and narrowly target our ideal prospective student there.
So I think you brought a great perspective, Gian. And one of the things that you introduced is, I think, a misnomer that I think a few folks might have around social media or paid social media, which is, hey, if you think about a customer journey, you know, sometimes you think about, you know, the awareness and the earlier stages of that customer journey, and social really playing a significant role there, which it does and can. But the targeting capabilities that you have, the personalized nature in which you can connect with your audiences later in that funnel is an important part there. I'd love to hear any organizations on the line here having success using social and particularly paid social outside of lead acquisition, outside of awareness, in terms of helping later in the funnel. Does anyone have any examples you might be able to share with someone? Because, you know, I think that connects to one of the things Kevin was talking about, you know, as we are kicking off the conversation today, is, you know, ROI. And there's it's easier sometimes to connect the ROI as you get further down the funnel.
This is Alan with Columbia. I think one of the things that we have found, at least I found really surprising, is I think we've targeted most of our social efforts over time toward really smaller donors, less engaged populations. And one of the things that we tried to do a little bit as a Hail Mary pass was we've done a series of social media efforts around planned giving and people making gifts of complex assets. And what's really been surprising to us is, you know, and it's where we get to the ROI piece, we've been able to generate not hundreds or thousands of leads, but 25, 30, 40 leads for bequest intentions, so forth within the campaign. You know, 3 or 4 conversions. In each of those cases, though, you're talking about conversions that mean gifts of Columbia, sort of in the 10K plus range. So it's sort of, for us, turns things on its head a little bit as to where we should really be trying to target some of our social efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. What are others seeing?
Steve, I could jump in if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so we, you know, as you know, and working with Angela and the team a little bit, we did look at retention strategies. So having a customer base out there, you're not so much looking for acquisition. You're really looking for that either. In our case, it was retaining people through the program over 3 or 4 years. So I'm sure it's the same with universities and healthcare, where you've got somebody that's been a subscriber or a customer, you want to keep them around. And if they do drift off, coming back at them, typically have a full CRM record on them, so you kind of know who they are and what they're all about. So doing some paid targeted, we were using LinkedIn and Facebook and just finding them, and then just doing very targeted outreach to them with just gentle reminders of, hey, come on back, we love you. And so that we didn't do it in a large scale just because we had so many other things to spend money on. But if you did look at the ROI, it was probably worthwhile to continue to kind of grow that element of the business, especially if you're having some retention issues or a very quality customer you might want to retain. So that was something we did outside of acquisition and awareness.
Yeah, it's a great example, especially where you have either high lifetime value of a customer. In your case, it was a multi-stage relationship that you have that continues to drive revenue, throughout from a known audience. Others want to weigh into this part of the discussion. If not, I want to shift gears and I guess complementary, but talk about return and ROI. How do you go about measuring your return on your social media efforts? There are all types of different types of ways in which you can track and measure and what's important, what's not. And this is a question we often get from clients. So, I'd love maybe one of our Fathom team members, if they would offer a perspective on this. And then I would really love to hear, what are you guys doing within your organizations to to measure the effectiveness of your social media efforts, as well as communicate that to your stakeholders.
Steve, I can jump in here with Fathom's perspective on how we think about ROI in social media. So, you know, as we mentioned, for most of our clients, we're talking about a high consideration and a long life cycle. So being able to accurately track and follow those social media efforts through, whether it's a student journey or a customer journey, is really important. And a lot of what we do there is through connections to CRM systems. We do implement retargeting today. I think in the world where third-party cookies and there's restrictions there, we're trying to solve for how are you not completely dependent on retargeting, and that first-party data in your CRM system is going to be your best friend. That's my prediction for the future and kind of how we think about it today. But how are you tracking? Are you utilizing hidden fields to understand where customers are coming in from, understanding the different touch points? Are you understanding the path to conversion and where social plays a role for most of your customers? And how are you inserting your strategies to those stages in their journey or throughout their funnel? You know, to really make the most impact. So really having a high level of data integrity and synchronization with your CRM is incredibly important to really understand how your social media efforts are affecting that. Now, I also know that's not everyone's realistic world every day. As much as I would say that that's the world that we live in, and we don't know anything else, that's not true. So understanding how your business model, how far can you track your social efforts, and how are you understanding social leads account for this percentage of total leads in my business, and I know that leads convert in this nature, and really working on that business modeling and understanding on how leads flow through your business, and what's the value of a lead to your business is a great way to start the social conversation around ROI, and understanding, you know, if you're lower on the maturity curve there, I think that's a great way that you can start to model out that ROI, and understand the value that social is bringing to your business. Deanna, I know you work with a lot of clients kind of in that like modeling perspective, and understanding when we don't have all of the tracking in place, whether that's a confinement of a platform or a system, how you've worked with clients to really bring forth that value. So I'd love for you to share maybe some examples of where you've seen success to help out our friends on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Angela mentioned, I think best case scenario, we are able to track the direct impact of our efforts post capture. So we're able to log into Salesforce, we're able to get into Marketo and see exactly what those people are engaging with, when they're taking the next step, and when they're ready to convert. But as she mentioned as well, of course, that's not always the case. We may not have that level of access, or we may not have that type of reporting available to us. So I think an opportunity, if you don't have access to that level of detail, is considering either industry benchmarks or internal benchmarks that you may have access to. I know with some of our clients, this especially comes up in the healthcare space, we may not be able to track direct patient acquisition, but we can at least set goals and expectations with our client partners that we're able to leverage to kind of extrapolate that bottom line impact. So if we know that typically when someone requests an appointment, there's maybe a 10%, maybe 10% of those show up to the appointment, we're able to use that percent as almost a proxy there to forecast for impact down to that point of a full acquisition. I think if we don't have even that internal data, there's definitely opportunity to consider industry benchmarks. So if we haven't launched a campaign before, how do we set a goal for what we'll see back from that campaign? I think a lot of what we do, we partner with so many institutions in these different industries. We at least have access to maybe another client partner who's running a similar campaign. What type of click-through rate did we see there? What type of conversion rate did we see when users do reach the website? At least using some sort of goal or target there. I think in these cases, having something is absolutely better than having nothing. So not letting perfect get in the way of progress, at least taking steps towards demonstrating that impact, and then evolving that model over time as you learn, were our hypotheses correct? Were we over forecasting? Were we under forecasting? How can we update those goals moving forward to become more accurate over time as well?
So with the discussion today, I mean, the namesake of the session is social media that converts. And as we did some introductions to kick off the conversation, ROI came up multiple times. I want to create a space here for what ROI questions do you have for one of our experts or one of your fellow marketers on the line? Anybody struggling with this, working through this, trying to think through it?
Steve, I could jump in if it helps.
Sure, go for
it. I think one of the areas was around organic, and again, if we're covering organic and paid, organic, where your goal is to sort of build community, right? Build a good feeling about you as a company, and your hope then is that that drives some conversion, but you're not necessarily hitting people with conversion messages all the time, right? It's all about thought leadership. It's about who are you, and so that I think gets a little trickier from an ROI perspective, right? Because you're tracking some great metrics around engagement and but then it's not necessarily driving conversion, and your focus isn't always conversion. So I think that's an area was pretty soft for us. So if there's anything on that, I'd love to get your perspective.
This is Todd, creative at MTC. Just a thought, question, or whatever you want to call it. At what point, from people's experience, do you just maybe in the early stages of working with a client, or you're working with an organization that doesn't have much experience out in the social realm? At what point do you just take ROI and say, like, forget about it? Let's get into this for some period of time, maybe primarily with organic, and see what type of reaction we can get to a presence that just wasn't saturated enough to really bring in any clues. And as unscientific as it sounds, let it rip, and then kind of regroup with whatever you have a month, 2 months, 6 months later, and start to formulate, strategy based on your own impression of the difference in, the difference that you feel in client conversation and so forth.
Yeah, Ted, I think that's really interesting, and kind of pairing that with Kevin's perspective. Something that we see is, as I think about social, and as much as we can be a direct response, we're being disruptive in someone's feed, whether it's organic or whether it's paid. Most of the time there's not that intent that like we see in search, or they're not sitting down to check their emails and in the mindset that, hey, I have to check off my to-do list. These are things that I want to do, whether that's submit my application to a university, or I want to learn more about how a business can solve for a challenge that I'm having at work. So they're not necessarily in that mindset. So I think we have to remember that we are being disruptive in nature when we're connecting with individuals on social media. And I think when we understand that, we also understand that they likely have disruptions in their day as they're experiencing that connection with you through social. So, we all probably have some personal relationship with social media channels. Are you scrolling through Facebook or through your LinkedIn feed while you're waiting, in a more normalized world than we're in today, but while you're waiting at a doctor's office, or while you're waiting for a friend at dinner? I think those are ways that people are consuming social. So understanding that you're disruptive and you have a moment to be memorable, we call it thumb stopping a lot. So how are you stopping someone's thumb as they're scrolling through their feed to connect with their brand? And a lot of times we measure success in that ROI in not their first instinct after that. They might look at your ad or look at your post. They might click through, they might not. They might not take any action in that moment, but are we able to, through different attribution windows, understand the influence that that experience had with an individual and how that led to a conversion down the line? And when we insert social into the conversation and we're inserting those connections, are we seeing higher ROI with those types of customers? Are we accelerating our sales cycle or our customer life cycle when we insert social into those conversations? So that's how I really think about social media, because at the end of the day, if we're coming in with a really transactional message, we're not resonating with anybody. Like that, your creative, your messaging, your approach, that connection, it's so important in social. We have a lot of tools at our disposal where we can inspire conversion and we can see revenue and value from social. But I think understanding the true role that it plays and what point in the consumer journey that social interaction is there and what we can expect from that is a really foundational point that I think you have to make when you think about your strategy.
I think as you seek to understand the impact of those incremental touch points along the way, arming yourself with the right data and the right tools to fully understand that full picture of impact is really critical as well. So I think within our channels, we have access to such fantastic reporting, whether we're looking at growth in followership and engagement with our posts and content organically, or we're digging into the details on the paid side and all of the great metrics that are available to us there. We have that view or those views available to us in the channel, but I would think about how you supplement those views with outside information and tools as well. So considering impact beyond that click, looking into influence in Google Analytics, where are those people navigating after clicking through a post? What types of content are they consuming and how long are they spending on site? I think that's a really logical next step. But even to take it a step further, I think if you do have a marketing automation platform in place or your CRM system, what data and learnings can you pull from those tools as well? So if you're looking at those interesting moments along the way for people who did engage on social versus people who didn't, was there a lift in their likeliness to convert later on in the process? What role did that touch point play in their overall journey? I would definitely think about marrying all of these great tools that we have and bringing them together to paint a fuller picture of impact.
So with your social media team, which characteristic team-wide do you think is more valuable, patience or impatience?
I think there's value in both, not to give a non-answer, but I think there are times when speed to market is more valuable than getting it 110% right the first time and learning along the way. But there are times when a more methodical, planned approach can make sense. I think in a lot of instances where we're launching a campaign or a program for the first time, it can make sense to launch with maybe broader targeting, and then you learn and optimize quickly along the way around what you see performing well. I'm thinking about another example, though. I know in times where we've launched more complex and more detailed, like ABM level strategies, there we put a lot more into the upfront planning process. If we're looking to connect with people at that level of personalization, we need to know everything we can know about them, what's motivating them, what's detracting them, and specifically what do we deliver when and to whom. So I think it kind of depends on the situation and depends on maybe the opportunity ahead of the team. If you choose to prioritize speed to market and you look to fail fast and learn fast, or if you put more into that upfront planning process, and maybe you start more narrow and then grow along the way.
That sort of brings to mind for me a saying about, I think that applies to a lot of marketing as well as other practices as well as life in general. That you will be punished severely for getting things mostly wrong. And I think social is we all probably understand that in terms of the viral nature of being tone deaf or getting a message wrong or taking a huge misstep. So you get punished for being mostly wrong, but you're rewarded generously for being slightly wrong. And so, Deanna, you talked about learning as learning by doing, essentially. And if you get some things slightly wrong along the way, social has a transient element to it. It's here today and gone tomorrow, again, if it's not mostly wrong. And so learning from that can improve what you're doing tomorrow by doing something today. So I'd just be curious if anybody has experience with that, or if potentially is maybe realizing that your desire to be always 100% perfect is maybe stopping you from being more effective today, even in organic. Just me.
I agree with you, Jim.
Personal problem, apparently, so I'll talk to my therapist about it. I appreciate the feedback. You all have been very helpful.
I could comment on that, Jim, if you want. Don't want to leave you hanging. I think there's that balance, right? And I think to Todd's question and a little bit to Angela's response and Deanna's response is that I think, and as you know, we work with the Fathom team. I think there's sort of long-range planning and short-term planning, right? And you have to strike the balance. So the patience factor might be the longer-term vision and the desire to just say, to Todd's point, is let's just get stuff out there, right? And let's be agile about it, right? So let's be smart about how we start, set some goals, right? Try to get some ideas of what we want to do, work on our objectives, work on our messages, focus, because you can't do everything, and then let it rip. And then, you're going to make some mistakes along the way, right, Jim? That there's going to be little things like that didn't work, or oh my God, look at our creative, it's all over the board. And then you can come back and you can do some testing and you can fail fast and then adjust quickly. And at that point, you can begin to incrementally build and understand, and then set more aggressive goals, right? Because you kind of know what you're accomplishing over time. And then you can say, hey, let's just keep moving the bar up and up and up. And so I think that is right on, Jim, and that you don't want to spend a year trying to figure out exactly what you need to do, right? You just want to get in market and learn from it quickly. And if you keep that open mind or in cadence around continuing to review and analyze, then you are going to make mistakes, but you're going to be able to fix on them and learn on them pretty quickly. So I think it's a very valid approach. So
you're both talking about essentially forgiveness. I mean, it's in the grand scheme of things, social media is a fairly forgiving platform because it's all conversation based. there's not necessarily a right or wrong with it. It's a very subjective world where you're putting things out there, people are reacting or not reacting, and then you're reacting or not, you're reacting to their reacting or not reacting. So it's a very, it feels like a very forgiving, so long as you're paying attention, flexible / forgiving mechanism. I tend to see things, I tend to see everything in sliding scales. You have, on this end, you have this, and on this end you have this. And, I tend to, in terms of the impact that social media can make, and just the point of this talk, and even how you measure that, for me, the sliding scale, the sliding scale based around this nucleus of action is that there's content that provides something to talk about, and then there's content that provides something to think about. So the content that provides something to think about isn't necessarily, and it's to each their own, right? So if I provide content, and you consume this content, Jim, you might think about that content. Better yet, you might talk about that content, which is more participatory. But that doesn't mean that thinking about that content isn't going to lead to a more participatory engagement of talking about that. So when you spread that out over a period of weeks, months, and interactions that Jim, you might get from my social media content, there's a greater chance that the thinking about it is going to turn into talking about it, and now you're actively engaging. So it's the part of the forgiveness, I think that's my word, but that I get from what you're describing is that over whatever that period of time is that you're thinking about my content, I am paying attention to the message, and I'm able to tweak, twist, and turn that until you either lose interest or start talking about it. But that's kind of how, that's a way to look at it.
Yeah, and for me, I think I know we've engaged with a lot of clients and even some personal experience on how aligned our team and our resources and skill sets are. So having somebody that potentially is more PR minded or sort of brand building or community building minded, thinking about that potentially aligned with organic versus somebody who is perhaps more goal oriented and really driven by marketing KPIs on the paid side. Is that the same person, or are they sitting on the same team? How are they aligned or misaligned? I'd be curious to know what your structure is, for everyone on the line. What's the structure of your teams in terms of managing organic versus paid social? Same person, different people, and the degree to which you think alignment has either driven success or maybe contributed to some opportunities. And I know Angela, Deanna, Corinne, you probably have some perspective on that too. So.
Just sort of building on your question a little bit, Jim. To answer, I feel like we've just merged our digital marketing and our annual fund programming teams under one team. So to try and, to your point, bring the paid organic, the whole idea a little closer together, be not agile, and trying to play in social as best we can. And I think one of the things that we struggle with is we talk about going out and doing a Facebook ad campaign around one project. We talk about doing an Instagram campaign around another project. How should we be thinking about social, not only aligned within our organizations, but how should we be aligning it across platforms? Should there be a cross-platform strategy as opposed to isolated strategies targeting separate platforms?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Alan. And from my perspective, we see the most success with clients when we're operating in a cross-platform strategy model. That's not to say that the message that we're sending, or even when we're sending it in Facebook, is the same as what we're sending in Instagram or on LinkedIn or on Twitter. It's very different messaging because they're consuming that in a different rate. But I think the beauty of a cross-channel approach to how you're thinking about a product or an initiative is the increased frequency and the touch points that you're connecting with your audience, and you're connecting with them in a different way. And it opens the opportunity for testing. So something might fail fast for you in Facebook, but it might be something that's really, really successful for you on Instagram. And we don't know that until we test. You also might see in terms of who's converting when. It's going to be different across channels, but where are we getting that assist? How are we building that frequency? In tactics, especially where we're being disruptive, that frequency is really important. We need to reach them more often so that they're remembering us, they're having conversations about us, and the ability to not just have that conversation in one platform, but across their experience in social allows us to take up more mind share when we think about our consumers, and it allows them to keep your brand more top of mind if they're experiencing you in different ways and in different platforms with different types of messaging. So thinking about what are the value props that you provide in Facebook, knowing who your audience is there or what time of day that they're accessing your ads or your organic posts. How is that different on Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn? And how are you tailoring your content as a result of that audience research that you're doing?
I know we're coming towards the end here. I want to offer up an opportunity for what discussions might you want to have that we haven't had a chance to have yet. I know we can run a few minutes over for folks who do want to stay on longer. So any open questions out there that we haven't covered yet that you would like to enter into the conversation?
I have a question. A lot of these strategies, I think, make a lot of sense to me with things I knew before COVID-19. And now I'm a B2B marketer, and now we just feel a little bit like we're uncertain of which of these strategies are still true, what might need to be adjusted, and these things that we know about our audience, are they still reliable, or are they in flux still? It seems to be the latter, but I'd love to know what you guys think.
Yeah, that's a great question, Caitlin, and something that I think our team has had very top of mind. So what we even saw a month ago versus what we're seeing today, I think it's still in flux a little bit. Some of the trends that we're seeing is that people are engaging more. So as we're seeing our costs to reach audiences or how far posts are going, if we're talking about an organic world, how many impressions we're getting on our organic posts, we're seeing increases there. And I think that in social, some of that is the nature of people are at home and they're connecting with people. They're using social media platforms to connect with people. They have more time on their hands. They're, researching more information than they ever were before. So we see consumption up significantly when we look at trends across our social platforms. But we're also seeing a lot of that engagement, and not just from a post or an ad engagement, but we're seeing people take action. Now, very bottom of the funnel action is something that a few weeks ago we weren't seeing a lot of that, but people who were inquiring for more information or who were visiting key pages on the sites or taking assessments, those were all types of actions that we see people doing more of. And I think that that's a little bit of the result of the time that they have on their hands. We've advised a lot of clients on how do we change our messaging to be more realistic in where we are today. There's ways that we need to lean in with our audience space that that maybe we weren't doing, you know, 2 months ago. So how do we really understand where our audience is at? Are you doing some social listening to say, what are they saying out there? What are our customers telling us? I think that doing a lot of listening right now and research and observing and looking at your data is your best insight into there. I think, you know, I mentioned the trends I'm seeing, but that's not true for every one of our clients. So how are you really reflecting on your data and looking at that period over period change, to understanding, are there new people who are interested in your product because you solved for something, a challenge that they didn't have 2 months ago, or is there all of a sudden an immediate need for something, and making sure that you're understanding that landscape and really leaning in and communicating with your customers and being vulnerable. I think in a post-COVID-19 world, we're all a little bit more vulnerable. Like, we're all in our homes today. We're all on Zoom. We wouldn't have been in this environment 2 months ago. So I think leaning into that vulnerability with your customers and thinking about that in terms of your messaging and what you're asking them for is really important as you navigate your strategy in the world that we're in today. Is that something that that you're experiencing, or like what changes are you seeing, Caitlin, or is that something that you have yet to dive into?
I think it's something that we're only just starting to think about. The immediate reaction was to kind of halt everything. But with that halt came, I think, a lack of listening. And so now we're starting to see the landscape shifting a little bit, and we're trying to get a sense of what problems can we solve for, what are the needs of our clients, and what other clients out there might benefit from the services we can offer.
Yeah, I think those are great starting points. The more that you can research and listen and lean in and understand how customers are experiencing you, how that's changing, and how you adapt, is key to your success there.
Yeah, great perspective all the way around. Any other remaining questions, perspectives, as we have a collection of marketers here on the line before we finish up? Perfect. Well, I want to just say thank you to everybody that joined the conversation today. Appreciate the great discussion and collaboration and participation. As many of you are familiar, we're doing this every single week. So we call it our Remote Roundtable series. Next week, the focus of the conversation is shifting to SEO, growth focus SEO. And then we'll be doing our second industry focus the week following. We did a higher education focus a few weeks back, and healthcare is the one that's coming. And then to round out, the third one on the list here is change management. And change management is an important part of anything that, or in normal times, change management is a big part of what we all need to do. And certainly during COVID-19, it becomes even more critical. So thank you for joining the session today. Hope you enjoyed the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.